right, back to the Tempest. Just a final note before we begin. The play is called The Tempest, but the Tempest, as such, the storm, is only occupying the first scene of the play. And you would have thought the play might be called The Island or something like that. But The Tempest is the name of the play because it has a rather extraordinary role in the events that transpire. And tempests are historically, and even in terms of Christian readings, such as in Scripture, they're signs of natural disaster and of forces of nature that are hostile to humanity. Remember Jesus on the boat in the midst of the storm and speaks to it, and it ceases. Remember the wind and the waves, and then the disciples say, "Who is that even the wind and the waves obey him?" Even though there's a reference in the Psalms to God speaking and the tempest being stilled and so forth, and the tempest being a symbol of the rage of the nations that defy God's righteous rule. And I think it's all of that's implicated in a tempest. So it's a sign of destruction, but the destruction here is almost like breaking an evil enchantment and casting a counter spell that Prospero is doing to rectify everything that's wrong. Everything that's gone wrong is in the background of the play before the play begins. The injustice, and we're going to have that revealed in the course of the play, the injustice done to Prospero and Miranda by his brother in deposing him and leading him to be shipwrecked on this island, and also the injustice done, or potential injustice done, by Caliban to Miranda, which was averted by Prospero. That all is there in the background of the story, and it begins with that, all of that bad stuff. And now he's using his art, his magic, to rectify everything that's gone wrong. And so the tempest here is not a destructive force. It destroys the boat, yes, but it's also the way that God is going to bring about a demonstration of his righteous rule. And I think Prospero is an instrument for that. Adam, do you have a comment?
I was just going to say, how this play started very much reminded me of like epic.
Yeah,
tradition.
It does.
Yeah, and I found that because some of the other plays, it's kind of like the problems presented at the beginning, yes, but this really does feel like you're submerged in the middle of the problem.
You are in medias res. Yeah, you're right. It's a real problem.
Yeah.
And the magical realism, which I said, or the romance genre, is episodic and not dealing with the entirety of the thing. Well, the episode here, though, the choice of the episode in a limited space and a limited time, very much features of a dramatic presentation in the short space and time. But the scope of it seems to be bigger. It represents, it's like microcosm of the bigger scope of things. And you could see it as he's a bit like Odysseus. He gets shipwrecked. Yeah.
Shipwrecked, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have said more Odysseus, but I understand why.
Tradition,
Yeah. But, and so it begins in the middle of a crisis, and the crisis is not so much the plight of the character, although that's, because they don't seem to be railing or impeded by being on the desert island per se. It's the injustice of what had happened in the past, which needs to be rectified, and also the plight of, or the problem that Prospero has in marrying off his daughter, because now she's grown up. She was a little girl when she came to the island. Now she's of marriageable age, and she's looking around, and she sees nobody else other than Caliban. Caliban's a wicked character, and the first man she sees other than him, she immediately falls in love with. Yeah, a human being, and he's nice, and so she idealizes him. It's very much like a young adolescent girl, or boy for that matter. And And Prospero's got to put the brakes on that a little bit, because he needs to, what sort of character is this? I want to bring about a marriage, yes, but I mustn't make it too easy for him, because he's not then going to value the girl either. And I want to test him. So there's a domestic part of it, which is also really interesting. But note that the art that Prospero uses, or the white magic as I called it, it's not like the magic that's used, and again, another contemporary play, the Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, where he makes a pact with the devil to use magic in exchange for power. Nothing of that here in Prospero. There's nothing illicit, no pact with the devil. His white magic seems more like the use of his art, which has power to get something good out of nature. And final comment is that C.S. Lewis observes that this is characteristic of the Elizabethan age, but not before it. The Middle Ages don't talk about the use of magic at all. It's not there, they don't do it, they're not interested in it. But come the Renaissance, as in the English Renaissance, 16th century, he notes that there's a spike in interest in it. And that might be problematic when you consider what scriptures say about witchcraft. But witchcraft here, at least in terms of magic, is considered to be benign, and it does seem to be connected with art. Maybe not, but it's problematic in a more biblical account. But the magic is in keeping with the use of his art and with a contemplative life. Oh yeah, that's the final thing I wanted to say. The problem with the character of Prospero is he was very much like in the Duke in Measure for Measure. He had fallen in love with his books and didn't want to be involved in the active life of ruling over the state. He had no interest in that. He didn't enjoy the busyness of life and the confrontation and the dealing out and meeting of injustice, all that. He just wanted to be quiet and live a monastic life, more or less. But he was not in that position. And that, in this case, the result of that is that his brother, he allows his brother to rule in his stead so that he can do what he loves. And eventually his brother decides, well, I don't need this guy and I'm out. He's out. Same sort of thing that C.S. Lewis then presents in A Horse and His Boy. Same sort of scenario, where one brother usurps his brother, and his brother then has to rectify the injustice done to him. But largely the injustice begins when he neglects his role in society, his political duties. In part because, as Plato says about the philosopher loves the good, the true, the beautiful. You actually have to compel that man to do these things, because quite frankly, when you go to stop bad people from doing bad things, they resist you. And it's not a very fun thing to do, to deal with evil. You're going to get resistance, you're going to get hostility, your life is going to be difficult. And you're not going to do enjoyable things, you're going to be largely pulling out weeds and setting up boundaries. But everyone will benefit if you do. If a good man does this, then everyone will benefit from it, but actually he will be reviled in the process.
It's one of the great downfalls of democracy.
Yes. Yeah.
By putting your leader as somebody who needs to maintain his popularity.
That's the problem. Yes. Yeah. So that's there, and so he's a scholar and a man who, for whom his library in Milan had been dukedom enough. He didn't care about the dukedom of Milan. He didn't care about power, and as a result, he's usurped. So that's the beginning of the play. We have actually not just a scholar on the island with his daughter. We actually have the former Duke of Milan who's been put into exile by his brother, and that's the injustice. So the play begins in injustice, just like the Odyssey begins, with Odysseus being exiled from his own kingdom of Ithaca, and in his place, ungodly individuals are ruling over his house and home, in this case the suitors. They're eating him out of house and home. His own son is threatened to be killed, etc. So it begins with an instance of injustice because he's absent. In Odysseus' case, he was not negligent. He went to war, and the gods won't let him go back. In this case, he is negligent. He's guilty. So he has to correct himself, or he's been punished to some degree, Prospero, by his negligence. And that's what he gets here is exile. But note that again, Lewis as a horse and his boy is very much beginning in something like this sort of scenario. Yes?
Because he's a true noble, where he lands, he can't help with becoming a ruler anyway.
He can't. And he does the right thing, though. So it's not a deficiency of character in the sense that he's abandoned the good. It's just because he loved the scholarly life ahead of the active life. And in Shakespeare's estimation, you have to marry those two and be a Renaissance man. I'm sorry, you have to be a man of affairs. If it's your calling and it's your title, you have to be the aristocrat that you are. And if you're not, everyone is going to suffer. If the aristocrats are not, in fact, good, then all they are is people in positions of power without the character that would go with it and the entitlement. So they're not really noble at all. Yes?
Well, I find even just like throughout church history, a lot of times the men that were called to higher offices rejected the concept of taking the offices initially and then like received it like after.
So it had to be forced upon them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Calvin in Geneva.
Yeah. Or like even, I can't remember if it was Augustine.
You had to basically forced to be there.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was Augustine. It might have been someone else, but they just like took him and like forcibly made him.
It's not a unique occurrence in the history of mankind and the history of the church. Yes, good men have to be forced to do the offices they don't want to do.
Yeah. Well, even just when we're talking about this, I thought of Jerome particularly, who like wants to be left with his books, and then literally there's like a convent of women that like plant themselves right beside him just to be near him, basically. And it's just like that's just the type of man. He's just I just want to write. I want to translate.
Yeah.
To read, and they're like we want you to lead.
I think that we are probably in such dark ages now where that sort of thing is happening again. Yeah.
Because of that, the ultimate leader doesn't need to compel their strength invites it.
Pretty much. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it's a product of our age that good is evil and evil is good. So that's a bad situation. Anyway, but God never is hamstrung by our wickedness. Anyway, the play begins. So the play begins with Prospero in the state of exile. Again, this is Miranda, and I think it's who is the artist here? The painter, pre-Raphaelite. Is it Waterman? I think. Anyway, but the shipwreck you can see in the background there, and I love that picture. So. That's how, oops, didn't work that way. So let me start by the play. So the dramatis personae, we've got Alonso, the king of Naples, Sebastian, his brother, Prospero, the right Duke of Milan, Antonio, his brother, the usurping Duke of Milan, Ferdinand, the son to the king of Naples, Gonzalo, an honest old counselor, Adrian and Francisco, who are lords, Caliban, described as a savage and deformed slave, Trinculo, a jester, Stefano, a drunken butler, and then the master of the ship. And then there are various other characters, including Miranda, who's Prospero's daughter, and then various spirits, Ariel, Iris, Ceres, Juno, nymphs, reapers, etc. These are spirits, and they attend Prospero. They're there at his bidding. In certain renderings of this, you could then see this play as archetypal, and you might want to read it in archetypal terms in accordance with the way Jordan Peterson tends to read all myths. And you'll see Prospero. I don't know if he's actually spoken of this play or not, by the way, but in that case, Prospero would be a godlike figure, and Ariel would be like something like an angel, and Caliban would represent the devil, And it's very, I think that's a very simplistic reading and doesn't really do service to the complexity of the ideas in the play. As far as Ariel goes, Ariel is a spirit that is ministering, is at the behest of Prospero, but seems to be constrained to do so, and is doing so for a period. And if she does so, she will be released from her terms of service. So it's not like God and angels. The spirits are not worshiping Prospero. They are the mediators, the ministers of his bidding, yes, but they have to be constrained to do so by his art. And there's some sort of compact between them that they will do this in return for being liberated. So what they represent, they're not angels. You can't see it that way. So the archetypal reading just falls down almost right away. It's a simplistic rendering of what's really going on here. I am somewhat friendly to this, but it's more beholden to the ideas of Carl Jung and probably our great compatriot Northrop Frye than it is actually the text itself. So anyway, let me read let me erase this first before I go on so you can see it. My scribbling. But the representative Vita Contemplativa is either a philosopher, a theologian, or a scientist, or an artist. In this case, I think we can see him as an artist, or if he is a representative of the playwright, then he is a dramaturge figure. Shakespeare himself is such a figure, orchestrating things and having to use powers to bring about the play's development. Anyway, Act 1, Scene 1. As ever in Shakespeare's plays, the stage or the description of scene is very limited. The scene is a ship at sea on the one hand and an uninhabited island on the other. That's the scene. Act 1, Scene 1, a tempestuous noise of thunder and lightning heard. Enter a shipmaster and a boatswain. So the ship first, and then we'll go to the island in Act 1, Scene 1. Boatswain, says the master. Here, master, what cheer? Good. Speak to the mariners. Fall to it, yarely, or we run ourselves aground. Bestir, bestir. Exit he goes. Mariners come in. Hey, my hearts, cheerly, cheerly, my hearts. Yare, yare. Take in the topsail, tend to the master's whistle, blow till thou burst thy wind, if room enough. So you have to blow hard because to be heard over the gale. Pull the topsail down because the tempest is so strong that it's going to push the sail, it's going to cast them. It's not going to knock them over because they have a keel, but it's going to run them aground. They have to stop. They're trying to steer and prevent from being shipwrecked. Enter Alonso, Sebastian, Antonio, Fernando, Gonzalo, and others. These are all dukes and even kings and their sons here. Alonso, and once again, Alonso is the king of Naples. So therefore, the first one to speak is the most senior in rank of the characters. Alonso, good boatswain, have care. Where's the master? Play the men. I pray now. Keep below, they say to Antonio. Why? Because you don't rule here. Go below deck. You're not the master of the ship. The sailors will take care of this. You stay out of our way, effectively. Play the men, I pray. Now keep below. Where is the master, bosun? Do you not hear him? You mar our labor. Keep your cabins. You do assist the storm. Nay, good, be patient. Boatswain, when the sea is hence, what cares these roarers for the name of king? To cabin, silence, trouble us not. So we have effectively a power struggle on the deck of the ship that's about to go down. And the sailors are telling the king of Naples that he doesn't rule here. Once they get off the ground, we will listen to you. For now, you're in our way. You are preventing us from doing our duties. There's a place for rule, and there's a place for retreating from your rule, already introduced right in the first scene of the play. Good. Yet remember whom thou hast aboard. So, don't get too uppity and mouth off. You've got kings here. Don't be speaking like this. Now, note that their speech here is not in verse. It's unrhymed. It runs over. There's no, maybe can't see this here, but in my presentation here, these are commoners speaking as commoners. So the commoners are ruling here over the aristocrats. We're not in a situation where, so everything's upside down in terms of hierarchy and rank. Now that I more none that I love more than myself. You are a counselor. If you can command these elements to silence and work the peace of the present, we will not hand a rope more. Use your authority. If you cannot, give thanks you have lived so long, and make yourself ready in your cabin for the mischance of the hour, if it so hap. Cheerly, good hearts, out of our way, I say. I have great comfort from this fellow. Methinks he hath no drowning mark upon him. His complexion is perfect gallows. He's not going to drown. He's going to be hanged. So insubordination. He's not worried about the drowning. That's good, but he's going to pay for this after we got off the ship. Stand fast, good fate. To his hanging, make the rope of his destiny our cable, for our own doth little advantage. If he be not born to be hanged, our case is miserable. Out he goes. So it immediately begins with a rather amusing little power struggle on the deck of the ship. Enter boatswain. Down with the topmast. Yare, lower, lower. Bring her to try with main course. A cry within. A plague upon with this howling. Oh gosh, this is the problem with me jumping back and forth this. They are louder than the weather of our office. Re-enter Sebastian, Antonio, and Gonzalo. Yet again? What do you here? Shall we give o'er and drown? Have you a mind to sink? So there's a tempest outside of them, above them, and there's conflict on the deck. There's chaos there by the attempt of the lawful authority on the land to exert authority on the sea, which he has no authority over. He has no authority over the wind and the waves. Shakespeare is making a little nod to scripture here in some ways. King has no rule here. Yet again, what do you have? Shall we give order and drown? Have you a mind to sink? And Sebastian, a pox on your throat! You bawling, blasphemous, incharitable dog. Work you then, right? In response to this. So they're at it here. Hang, cur, hang you, whoreson, insolent noisemaker. We are less afraid to be drowned than thou art. I'll warrant him for drowning, though the ship were no stronger than a nutshell, and as leaky as an unstaunched wench. Lay her a hold, see, set her 2 courses off to sea again, lay her off. Enter mariners wet, all lost. To prayers, all lost. Now when the mariners give it up and think that they're all lost, you're done. When the mariners are afraid and they know that the game's up, it's up. What? Must our mouths be cold? The king and prince at prayers, let's assist them, for our case is as theirs. So an appeal to the authority of the king here, and the king has no authority. I'm out of patience. We are merely cheated of our lives by drunkards. This wide-chapped rascal, one with a big mouth, who thou mightst lie drowning and washing of 10 tides. He'll be hanged yet. So Gonzalo begins, he really wants this impudent rascal. I'm going to make sure he's hanged. He doesn't care about the storm. He cares about the insolence of the sailor speaking to him. He'll be hanged yet, though every drop of water swear against it and gape at wide as to glut him. A confused noise within. Mercy on us. We split, we split. Farewell, my wife and children. Farewell, brother. We split, we split, we split. Let's all sink with the king. Let's take leave of him. Exit. And Gonzalo, now would I give 1,000 furlongs of sea for an acre of barren ground, long heath, brown furs, anything, the wills above be done, but I would fain die a dry death. End of the scene. And what they see, of course, or what happens, is the very thing that Miranda sees, which is the destruction of the ship. It falls apart, breaks up. That's what she witnesses. And the play scene shifts. And now it shifts to the island before Prospero's cell. Now a cell is a little abode. He doesn't have a house. It's a hut of some sort. Yeah. I don't know if it's a cave or what it is, but it is some sort of place that is where he is preserved from the elements. Miranda, if by your art, now note the change in the form of speech. She, just like her father, speaks in verse. She speaks with the artifice of verse. And Shakespeare's reflecting therein her nobility of station. She speaks like an aristocrat, just like he does. And all the characters who are noble will speak in artificial. The artificial speaks of what we call blank verse, but it still has the meter, iambic pentameter. Whereas the other characters were disordered in their speech, just like they were disordered in their thoughts, and it reflected the fact that on the sea, there is no authority except the captain's. You do what he says, and everybody else is equal. It doesn't matter if you were the president or a king or whatever. You go below ship because you have no rank here. In the midst of chaos, it's all about getting through it, and that has nothing to do with your own natural rank or political rank per se. But Miranda speaks in verse to her father and tellingly makes a reference to art. And I think it is telling, and it's also very interesting. If by your art, your technique, the word art in Latin is the same word as techne in Greek. And it fits, again, my insistence at the beginning of the play that this play is about how technique or art relates to the natural world and how it works to perfect the natural world so it does the right thing. In the midst of a fallen world, art is nonetheless useful and in fact essential for human beings to navigate this situation in life of Adam and Eve in the garden. There'll be lots of political treatises written on this. The state of nature after the fall. What are we to do? What is the, and more broadly in a Christian context, what's the relation of Christianity to culture? How should we regard our enterprise? What are we to do? With our art, with our science, with our theology, with our philosophy, what's the purpose? Are we to let nature be natural? Well, if we do, we'll find that the nature which God created to be good is corrupted by the fall. It falls with Adam and Eve. It's not just Adam and Eve that are corrupted by sin. The whole creation groans because of our sin. And so what do? Well, you use your God-centered and God-normed arts, your sciences, in order to try and rectify some of the ills of nature that have come about because of original sin. You try and restore that, and you try to remedy some of the consequences of the fall. Yes?
I think also just even like the parable of the talents, kind of like taking what's there and like cultivating it, making it grow, seeing it like multiply, so to speak. Obviously, in the context, it's talking about investing, but I think the overall principle of like
utilizing your gifts.
Yeah, utilizing your gifts and not just leaving it there to lay kind of waste.
Lay dormant and effectively regarding the Lord as a severe taskmaster and so therefore not doing anything.
Right.
But that's the environmentalist response, is that we should let nature be natural and thereby good things will come. And you think, well, there's this thing called the wilderness.
Yeah.
And and in the Bible, it's a sign of God's curse. It's a God-forsaken place.
Yeah.
But you're to make the wilderness into a garden. You're supposed to make it a well-tended garden. You're supposed to make, to remove the weeds as best you can, bring good crops to grow, to bless the earth, and that includes dominion over the animals. You have to cull some of the animals. You have to cultivate the land. You have to, and there's blessing not just for people, but for the whole earth if you do that. There are also ways of doing that wrongly, of course. But just standing back and doing nothing, not an option. And so Miranda says, if by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. She asks him because she knows that he could do that, and he has done that, in fact. So that's the interesting thing here, is that so powerful is Prospero that he even has a manner or an art to influence the natural order to create chaos. But is his purpose destructive? It appears to be at the outset, but we'll find that it isn't. There's a higher purpose here rather than simply environmental chaos, if you will. So if by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them, the sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, sign of judgment, just like in Sodom and Gomorrah, pitch coming down to destroy. But that the sea mounting to the welkin's cheek, the cloud's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. A brave vessel who had, no doubt, some noble creature in her, dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth, or ere it should the good ship so have swallowed, and the frotting souls within her. Be collected, says Prospero, no more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done. So the daughter sees shipwreck, thinks that everyone has perished, and Prospero knows better. Not, yeah, we haven't got there yet. Not yet, but we're coming to that. Not yet. Oh, woe the day! No harm! I have done nothing, but in care of thee, my dear one, thee, my daughter, who art ignorant of what thou art, not knowing of whence I am, nor that I am more better than Prospero, master of a full poor cell, and thy no greater father. So what we find here is that he's told her nothing about his past. Hasn't given any rendering of this for whatever reason, but now he needs to do that. And in the process, he'll enlighten everyone watching the play as to the backstory, but now it begins. More to know did never meddle with my thoughts. 'Tis time I should inform thee farther. Lend thy hand and pluck my magic garment from me. So she takes it off and lays down the mantle, his mantle. And the mantle, he calls his art. Now the mantle, let me say something about the mantle here, the robe. Just a little bit. There are people in the Western tradition who wear robes. Who are they?
Rulers of various kinds.
Rulers,
Can be kings, popes,
kings,
princes, that kind of thing.
clergy, legislators, lawyers, academics. If you go to Oxford, Cambridge University, I've got one, you wear a robe when you preach or you teach in class. Put on the academic robe. You're taking on the office, the mantle at that point of the teacher. Now there are certain individuals that have a robe. It's a type of office, but it's also, I think, you're in the ministry of the Levitical priesthood here. You're exercising certain offices that go with the Levites, which include teaching and ruling and healing. Who else wears a robe? A doctor. The white coat, the lab coat, that's a robe. Those offices are there for the blessing of a culture. And those that exercise and minister in those robes are called ministers of various sorts. And there's ministries that go with that in terms of politics. And he's wearing the robe, but it's a robe that is influenced by his art, but his art is also motivated by a Christian character. And we're going to find that. So it's not just a naturalistic white magic in the sense of a naturalistic agency. I do think that it has something of a Mosaic understanding of what his office should do. But now he uses it to bring about the shipwreck, but he is going to lay it down. And we're going to note the use of the robes, because he's going to repeatedly talk about them and the use of them, which is tied to his life as a contemplative rather than a magistrate. So anyway, but he says, lay down these robes. Lay down, no, okay, so there he picks it up and says, lay there my art. Remember? She said, if by your art you can, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in the shore, allay them. And now he refers to the robe as his art. In other words, his office and the knowledge that comes with it, which he wielded for a certain outcome. So he says to the robe, lay there my art. Wipe thou thine eyes, he says to his daughters. Have comfort. The direful spectacle of the rack, which touched the very virtue of compassion in thee, I have with such provision in mine art, so safely ordered that there is no soul, no, not so much perdition as an hair, betid any creature in the vessel, which thou heardst cry, which thou sawest sink down. For thou must now know farther. Not a hair. There's something godlike in this. Not a hair from our falls from our heads, not a sparrow from the sky without God's providence. He has a providential aim. He's acting in a Christian fashion over this, even though it appears to be malicious in intent. There's a benignity beneath that which informs his art. And the art has a charitable purpose, not only for his daughter, but for a broader concern. Even his enemies, he's going to bless. So he acts not only here as a somebody who has power, but uses it for Christian purposes. So we need to recognize this here. We need to see more of him here. I don't think he represents God. I think he represents a Christian statesman who exercises his authority as God himself has commanded him to exercise the office. That's my understanding here. Just like Shakespeare, the playwright exercises his office to fulfill God's purposes in depicting what he does on stage for other people to learn from. Yes, before I move on.
Also reminded me, in a wedding ceremony, the person who marries people is a minister, traditionally wears a robe, and he's trying to orchestrate the marriage. So
he is orchestrating the marriage.
yeah, so like the play itself as a whole is a wedding, and he is robed as.
Well, I don't see the whole thing as a wedding from the beginning to the end, but I do think he's acting as a minister in the broadest sense of using all of the arts which are in the Christian liberal arts tradition. Theology is the queen of the sciences, but then she has various ministers, which are the 7 liberal arts, and he's using those arts for the purposes of a theological purpose to create a good outcome here. Now, in the end, he wants to be a good father, but he also has a higher responsibility outside of his own particular family and his own particular concerns to all of the men who are on the ship, even though they're his enemies. So again, there's something Christian in how he's going to undertake this whole ministry here. That doesn't mean that everybody is going to be happy in the outcome of it, but everyone is going to be rectified that he can fix in that. So on we go. I'm going to inform you what this is. And Miranda, you have often begun to tell me what I am, but stopped and left me to bootless inquisition, concluding, stay, not yet. The hour's now come. The very minute bids thee ope thine ear, obey and be attentive. Canst thou remember a time before we came unto this cell? I do not think thou canst, for then thou wast not out 3 years old. Certainly, sir, I can. By what? By any other house or person? Of any thing the image? Tell me, that hath kept with thy remembrance. 'Tis far off. and rather like a dream than an assurance that my remembrance warrants. Had I not 4 or 5 women once that tended me? Thou hadst, and many more, Miranda. But how is it that this lives in thy mind? What seest thou else in the dark backward and abysm of time? If thou rememberest aught ere thou camest here, how thou camest here, thou mayest. But that I do not. Okay, so then he knows where he can begin the tale. 12 years since, Miranda, so she's 15. 12 years since, thy father was the Duke of Milan and a prince of power. Sir, are not you my father? Thy mother was a piece of virtue, and she said thou wast my daughter. And thy father was Duke of Milan, and his only heir and princess no worse issued. Oh, the heavens! What foul play had we that we came from thence? Or blessed wast we did? Both, my girl, by foul play, as thou sayest, were we heaved thence, but blessedly holp hither. Oh, my heart bleeds to think of the teen that I have turned you to, which is from my remembrance. Please you, farther, my brother, and thy uncle called Antonio. I pray thee, mark thee. So she's a 15-year-old. And when her father's talking to her, she doesn't even have a cell phone, and she's still distracted. She'll see some of the, mark me. So there's an interaction between father and daughter here. He's already boring her. She wanted a quick answer, and he always wants to give a long, extended explanation of things. Okay, I pray thee, mark thee, that a brother should be so perfidious, he whom next thyself of all the world I loved, and to him put the manage of my state, as at that time through all the signories it was the first, and Prospero the prime duke, being so reputed in dignity and for the liberal arts, without a parallel. Those being all my study, the government I cast upon my brother, and to my state grew stranger, being transported and wrapped in secret studies. Thy false uncle, dost thou attend me? She's already lost. Sir, most heedfully, being once perfected how to grant suits, how to deny them, who to advance and who to trash or topping, new created the creatures that were mine, I say, or changed them, or else new formed them, having both the key of officer and office, set all hearts in the state, to what tune pleased his ear, that now he was the ivy which had hid my princely trunk, and sucked my verdure out on't. Thou attend'st not. Oh, good sir, I do. I pray thee mark me. I, thus neglecting worldly ends, all dedicated to closeness and the bettering of my mind, with that which, but by being so retired, or prized all popular rate, in my false brother awaked an evil nature, and my trust, like a good parent, did beget of him a falsehood in its contrary, as great as my trust was, which had indeed no limit, a confidence sans bound. He, being thus lorded, not only with what my revenue yielded, but what my power might else exact, like one who, having into truth by telling of it, made such a sinner of his memory, to credit his own lie, he did believe he was indeed the Duke, out of the substitution, and executing the outward face of royalty with all prerogative. Hence his ambition growing. Dost thou hear? She keeps getting bored and looking off, and your tale, sir, would cure deafness. So he's a little bit old, and he wants to be attended. So the interaction between father-daughter is a little humorous as well. And you can do it really well if you've got good actors here. To have no screen between this part he played and him he played it for, he needs will be Duke of Milan. Absolute Milan, rather. Me, poor man, my library was dukedom large enough. Of temporal royalties he thinks me now incapable. Confederates, so dry he was for sway, with the king of Naples, to give him annual tribute, do him homage, subject his coronet to his crown, and bend the dukedom yet unbowed, alas, poor Milan, to most ignoble stooping. Oh, the heavens! Oh, the heavens! What mark? I'm not going to go back with this. Mark his condition and the event. Then tell me if this might be a brother. I should sin to think but nobly of my grandmother. Good wombs have borne bad sons. Now, the condition. This king of Naples, being an enemy to me, inveterate, hearkens my brother's suit, which was that he, in lieu of the premises of homage, and I know not how much tribute, should presently extirpate me and mine out of the dukedom, and confer fair Milan with all the honors on my brother. Whereon a treacherous army levied one midnight, fated to the purpose, did Antonio open the gates of Milan in the dead of darkness. The ministers for thy purpose hurried thence me and thy crying self. Alack, for pity! I, not remembering how I cried out then, will cry it o'er again. It is a hint that rings mine eyes to it. Hear a little further, and then I'll bring thee to the present business, which now's upon us, without the which this story were most impertinent. Wherefore did they not that hour destroy us? Well demanded, wench. Wench is just a young girl. Never mind how it's used in common parlance. Not that it's used that much. Well demanded, wench. My tale provokes that question. Here, they durst not, so dear the love my people bore me, nor set a mark so bloody on the business, but with colors fairer painted their foul ends. In few, they hurried us aboard a bark, a little boat, bore us some leagues to sea, where they prepared a rotten carcass of a butt, not rigged, nor tackle, sail, nor mast. The very rats instinctively have quit it. There they hoist us to cry to the sea, that roared to us to sigh to the winds, whose pity sighing back again did us but loving wrong. Alack, what trouble was I then to you? Oh, a cherubim thou wast that did preserve me. Thou didst smile, infused with a fortitude from heaven, when I have decked the sea with drops, full salt. Of under my burthen groaned, which raised in me an undergoing stomach to bear up against what should ensue. How came we ashore? By providence divine. Some food we had, and some fresh water. That a noble Neapolitan, Gonzalo, out of his charity, who being then appointed master of this design, did give us, with rich garments, linens, stuffs, and necessaries, which since have steaded much, out of his of his gentleness, knowing I loved my books, he furnished me from mine own library with volumes that I prize above my dukedom. Would I might but ever see that man. Now I arise. Robe comes back on. He took the robe off to tell the tale, and then puts it back on. He's the father. He's not he's not enacting any office. He's just the father recounting the story of the individual. Now he's more than an academic, although he talked about the liberal arts, being a master of the liberal arts. Gosh, what's the Marvel character? Stephen Strange got the master. Never mind. Don't get into all that. Well, let's not mix. Right? Doctor Strange? Master? Never. Forget it. Get the robe back on, and now he's going to act as the magistrate and not just the father. So the king has two bodies. His own body, in which he also is the father of a daughter, but now he's also going to take on an office and execute the office as king. Having recounted the story, now he's going to act like that duke. Yes, comment.
On a larger scale, that would be reflecting God's rules for humanity as a father and as a judge.
I don't understand the question exactly. So by putting on the robe, would it reflect?
Like God's role as judge, but when he had it off, he was acting as the father.
I don't think that God ever takes off any of his robes. God is always the judge. He is the father. He never abandons any of the roles. He's able to execute all of the roles simultaneously, perfectly. But in human form, we have different offices and different stations, and we even have, so if you look to the book of the Pentateuch, it talks about different offices and delegations and separating the powers. So there's the king and there's the judges and so forth. And in the Mosaic law, there's even deputation. Moses, there are too many cases, and Moses says, "I'll depute the lower cases to you fellows, and you judge upon them. And if a case is too hard, will you bring it back to me?" and so forth. God executes all of those, but he delegates his powers in certain ways to certain people. So I don't think it's a reflection on what God does, but I do think it's a reflection on what a kingdom does. The king doesn't do all of the things. In the early kingdoms, the king is the judge. So in the Odyssey, Odysseus is the king, he's also the judge. If the king's away, there's no justice because there's no judge. But in the Hebrew Republic, which is how the Americans saw themselves, by the way, as a republic because of the scriptures, there's a different office between the president, who has executive power, and the judiciary and the legislative branch, and these are all delegated powers, and they are played, there are checks and balances on each of them to prevent the problem of human sinfulness, which God doesn't suffer. It's not only just the problem of potency, it's an issue of sinfulness. God has no sin. He doesn't need to restrain his offices in any way. He's always got all the robes on. Not that he's ever depicted in robes, but does that answer the question? Yes. We don't have to worry about God's limitations, his finitude. We also don't need to have to worry about how too much power will corrupt him because of his goodness. But we do need to worry about human beings. Therefore, we limit their offices to certain bounds, and there are other offices that are there to execute other aspects of God's providence on earth. Anyway, so all of that's a reflection. So he puts back the robe, and now he's going to act in the form of his office. The office is not entirely clear here, but I think having said that he was Duke of Milan, you could see that he's acting as the Duke of Milan in some ways in the proper Duke did. And towards his brother and so forth, how, as we know, was on the ship that was just wrecked. So he puts on his robe, sits still, and hear the last of our sea sorrow. Here in this island we arrived, and here have I, thy schoolmaster, made thee more profit than other princes can, that have more time for vainer hours, and tutors not so careful. So she's been the beneficiary of a homeschooling from a master of the arts and a model of good character. And he has not had to devote his time to other people and other affairs. So there's been good to it to ask her, answer her original question. If it's all lost, no, it's not. I've had 15 years and 12 of them with only you. And that's good for me and for you. It expresses his love towards her. But he's been her schoolmaster. And Miranda, in response, heaven thank you for it. Heaven thank you for it. For now I pray you, sir, for still 'tis beating in my mind, your reason for raising this sea storm? Know thus far forth, by accident most strange, bountiful fortune, now my dear lady, hath mine enemies brought to this shore, and by my prescience I find my zenith doth depend upon a most auspicious star, whose influence, if now I court not, but omit, my fortunes will ever after droop. Here cease more questions. Thou art inclined to sleep. 'Tis a good dullness, and give it way. I know thou canst not choose. And falls asleep. Notice he cast her into sleep? Probably. But she's tired as well. There's a sense, but note that he's talking now here about God's providence, but also the element of fortune, as in something has happened auspiciously. The constellations have lined up, so the influence of heaven has worked in such a way that the time is here, and if he misses the opportunity, it will never come again. He has a limited power over a limited area. And yet his brother and the king of Naples have fallen into that area, and he has a moment to do something here which he otherwise, if he missed it, would never be able to have the opportunity to rectify it again. So he has to act right now. So there's an urgency in the action. So he's not God. God has given him the opportunity. He's fortunate, lucky, and in the sense of the circumstances and time, but aware because of his goodness and his character to seize the moment and strike while it's hot. So off he goes. So come away, servant, come, I am ready now. Approach my Ariel, come. Now Ariel comes in. And I remember what I said about Ariel. All hail, great master, grave sir, hail. I come to answer thy best pleasure. Here be it to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, to ride on the curled clouds. To thy strong bidding, task Ariel and all his quality. Note, Ariel is not a woman. His quality. Hast thou, not Little Mermaid, Ariel. It's not, don't feminize it. Hast thou, spirit, performed to point the tempest that I bade thee to every article? To every article. I boarded the king's ship, now on the beak, now on the waist, the deck, in every cabin. I flamed amazement. Sometimes I divide and burn in many places, on the topmast, the yards, and the bowsprit. Would I flame distinctly, then meet and join Jove's lightning, the precursors of that dreadful thunderclaps, some momentary and sight outrunning were not. The fire and cracks of sulphurous roaring the most mighty Neptune seem to besiege and make his bold waves tremble. Yea, his dread trident shake. My brave spirit, who was so firm, so constant that this coil would not infect his reason. Not a soul but felt a fever of the mad, and played some tricks of desperation. All but mariners plunged in the foaming brine and quit the vessel. Then all afire with me. The king's son, Ferdinand, with hair upstaring, then like reeds, not hair, was the first man that leapt, cried, Hell is empty and all the devils are here. Why, that's my spirit. But was not this nigh shore? Close by, my master. But are they, Ariel, safe? Remember Puck. Because we're acquainted with Shakespeare's ministering spirits sometimes. Ariel is not like Puck. He doesn't delight in mischief. He doesn't get things wrong. He doesn't err. He is the proponent of a good master and uses his art extremely well and listens to orders. Close by him, but are they safe? Yes. Not a hair perished. On their sustaining garments, not a blemish, but fresher than before, and as thou badest me, in troops I have dispersed them about the isle. The king's son have I landed by himself, whom I left cooling of the air with sighs, in an odd angle of the isle, and sitting, his arms in this sad knot. He's got his arms around his knees. Of the king's ship, the mariners, say how thou hast disposed, and all the rest of the fleet. Safely in harbor is the king's ship. So everybody jumps overboard except the sailors. They stuck with the ship, and they're fine. They thought it was going to fall apart. It didn't. Safely in harbor is the king's ship in the deep nook where once thou callest me up at midnight to fetch dew from the still vexed Bermuths. where she's hid. The mariners all under hatches stowed, who with a charm joined to all their suffered labor, I left asleep. And for the rest of the fleet, which I dispersed, they all have met again, and are upon the Mediterranean float, bound sadly home for Naples, supposing that they saw the king's ship wracked, and his great person perish. Ariel, thy charge exactly is performed. But there's more work. What is the time of the day? 'Tis past the mid-season. At least 2 glasses. 2 days. It's got an hour glass a day. At least 2 glasses. Maybe 2 hours, but I think it's probably 2 days. The time twixt 6 and now must by us both be spent most preciously. Is there more toil? Since thou dost give me pains, let me remember thee what thou hast promised, which is not yet performed me. How now? Moody. What is thou canst demand? My liberty. Before the time is be out, no more. I prithee, remember I have done thee worthy service, told thee no lies, made thee no mistakings, served without or grudge or grumblings. Thou didst promise to bate me a full year. Dost thou forget from what a torment I did free thee? No, thou dost, and think'st it much to tread the ooze of the salt deep, to run upon the sharp wind of the north, to do me business in the veins of the earth, when it is baked with frost? I do not, sir. Thou liest, malignant thing. Thou hast forgot the foul witch Sycorax, who with age and envy was grown into a hoop. Hast thou forgot her? No, sir. So this is a spirit that was in bondage to the witch Sycorax and imprisoned inside of a tree. And he has released her from that bondage. Now it's a spirit. There's spiritual powers that were used for evil are now being, but the spirits are not in and of themselves good. It's a spiritual realm. Anyway, Ariel is one such spirit. Not an angel, in other words. Certainly not an angel. You can't read it in a sort of the manner of the archetype. Simply doesn't fit at all. Thou hast. Where was she born? Speak, tell me, sir, in Algiers, North Africa. Oh, was she so? I must once in a month recount what thou hast been, which thou forgetst. This damned witch, Sycorax, for mischiefs manifold and sorceries terrible to enter human hearing, from Algiers thou knowest was banished. For one thing she did, they would not take her life. Is not this true? Aye, sir. This blue-eyed hag, lest you think he's being racist, African, she's a blue-eyed hag. It's like in most of Shakespeare's things, it's an imaginary world that he's constructing here. He's not interested in contemporary discussions of race the way we construe. This blue-eyed hag was hither brought with child. Where have I got it? With child. And here was left by the sailors. Thou, my slave, as thou reportst thyself, was then her servant. And for thou wast a spirit too delicate to act her earthy and abhorred commands, refusing her grand heats, she did confine thee by help of her more potent ministers, and in her most unmitigable rage into a cloven pine, within which rift imprisoned thou didst painfully remain 12 years, within which space she died, and left thee there, where thou didst went thy groans as fast as mill wheels strike. Then was this island, save for the son that she did litter here, a freckled whelp, hag born, not honored with a human shape. Yes, Caliban her son. So now we find that Caliban is also not native to the island. And the offspring of a hag witch of malign character. That's his background. Dull thing, I say so. He, that Caliban, whom now I keep in service, Thou best knowest what torment I did find thee in. Thy groans did make wolves howl and penetrate the breasts of ever angry bears. It was a torment to lay upon the damned, which Sycorax could not again undo. It was mine art. It's not that even if she'd wanted to, she couldn't do it. She could only do a malign thing. She didn't have the power to do the benevolent thing. Only mine art. When I arrived and heard thee, that made gape the pine and let thee out. I thank thee, master. If thou more murmurest, I will rend an oak and peg thee in his knotty entrails till thou hast howled away 12 winters. Pardon, master. I will be correspondent to command and do my sporting gently, spriting gently. Do so, and after 2 days I will discharge thee. Okay, so, and that's an interesting thing as well. 2 days. Now, if you wanted to, I don't know if you would do this, but this is a 3-day story. It's day 1. It's Good Friday. You could, if you wanted to see it in Christian terms, you wouldn't do it in the fashion of an archetype. You'd want to see it in Christian terms. This is day 1, the shipwreck, the death, the apparent death, and a rebirth and a renewing of all things. That's how you could see it. Just the timeline, it's a small little detail, but he's going to free her from her ministry at that point, because we're going to see at the end of the play, he also will put his robes down and say that his ministry is ended and so forth. So, but we'll get to that next time. But setting the stage really important here, and what he's trying to do in the play. And I think you can see my portrait of him as a Christian magistrate probably fits the text better than, and certainly the cultural Marxist materialist reading. Just, my goodness, how bad and wrong is it to the play? I mean, it's a total distortion. Anyway, we'll pick it up next week.